Well, welcome in everybody to the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com, brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm Zach Ewing. In the holiday spirit, as you can see, back in the office, happy again, along with Spencer the Guru Urquhart to talk you through some fantasy football playoff action, maybe talk you off the ledge. It's a tough week, man. Week 15 is still going on. There's 2 games tonight, but this is as tough of a fantasy week from a getting your studs to score perspective I can remember in a long time, Spencer.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt, Zach. This week was just a shredder, man. That's the only way I can describe it. Just you went in and just hoping you survived because pretty much everybody scored lower than their projection. It was one of those weeks to where just no one really met expectations. I mean, Jonathan Taylor did, but he's a different breed. A lot of the stud running backs like Alvin Kamara struggled, Najee Harris struggled. Even a lot of receivers struggled, like Jamar Chase. Quarterbacks like Tom Brady struggled, and all their injuries. I mean, that's just it was a week. With considering the COVID and the injuries, it was a week unlike any other for not good reasons, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a grinder. I mean, and it really emphasizes how important it can be if you're in a league with buys. How important it could be to get the buy. I had a terrible week in one league, but I have a buy, and so I get a mulligan. I get to try again next week. My other league doesn't have buys, and it did not end well for me. Barring a huge game from Dallas Goedert tonight, I'm done. And it's because I had Chase Claypool, Amari Cooper, Taysom Hill combined for 6.5 points. Which
man.
those are all guys you're willing to start in most cases. Oh, and throw in Cordero Patterson only had a couple points too. So those 4 guys had like 8.5 points. And there's just it's not like you can beat yourself up for starting any of them. Especially it was a super flex league. Taysom Hill was my number 2 quarterback, but just didn't work out. So sometimes that happens. If you have questions or comments, tell us how your week went. Tell us how you're doing in the playoffs. If you're still alive going into tonight, what you need, throw it out into the universe. We'll see if we can get it for you. Or you can ask us questions, lineup questions for tonight, waiver wire questions if you're into the Final Four in your league, and we'll talk Week 16. Want to remind you before we get started, you can download the Caesar Sportsbook app today, NOLA.com/Caesars. Sign up and get a $100 bonus when mobile betting launches, which we expect to be in January. So go ahead, use that Christmas money, get your deposit in there, and a $100 bonus is coming your way when mobile betting launches. So it's very exciting. All looking forward to that. And that address again is NOLA.com/Caesars. This is the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. And let's get started, as we always do, with a look back at last week. And we're going to start with the top scoring quarterbacks from Week 15. Tyler Huntley. It's not Tyler Huntley, it's Brett Huntley.
Oh, it's Tyler.
Is it Tyler Huntley? Now, see, I'm getting very confused. This is the kind of a week it was. It is Tyler. Who's Brett Hundley? He's somebody else.
That was the guy that went to UCLA, who was the Packers backup.
He's the Packers backup. Tyler Huntley went to Utah. He's the Ravens backup. That's where I'm getting confused. Tyler Huntley was the highest scoring quarterback of the week by 6 points. And we all thought, the Packers defense has been pretty good. Lamar Jackson's out. This is going to be really bad. And he was one of the few guys you could count on at quarterback this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to mention him in my column because it just showed that the Ravens offense didn't miss a beat with him. He looked like Lamar Jackson under center because he was not only good, he could throw. I mean, he ran a lot too. Had 2 rushing touchdowns, and Hollywood did well. Mark Andrews did really well. We'll get to him later, but yeah, it was weird to see him at the top. But I mean, I didn't realize he could run that well. I didn't realize he had the rushing ability similar to the guy in front of him on the depth chart in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, again, shows you in today's NFL how important it is to have a quality backup. And that goes for fantasy football, too. You got to have that guy to throw in there. And Tyler Huntley got the job done. The rest of that list, Patrick Mahomes, there was nothing wrong with that Thursday night game. Chiefs and Chargers, you had a lot of guys go off in that game. You see Justin Herbert at the bottom of the list. Aaron Rodgers, of course, has been an every week staple on this list. And then Cam Newton, boy, when he gets it going on the ground, he's still a fantasy relevant player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like a total hit or miss. It's like he's either gonna be a QB1 or just not even in the mix, like a guy that just gets you like 5 points. Like it's hard to know when to use him. But and this week I would have said, heck no, was facing Buffalo. I wouldn't have touched Cam Newton this week, but he just decides to do well out the blue. He's somebody that in super flex, keep him around, but in single quarterback, he's just too erratic to trust.
Yeah, and the super flex league I was talking about, complaining about, where I had Taysom Hill, Cam Newton's on my bench. Don't know if it would have made a difference. I still would have needed something from Goddard tonight, but it just makes you okay. Well, Taysom Hill had been a lot more consistent than Cam Newton, even though they're in some ways similar players. So it was just one of those things where you make the wrong call. So another illustration of what kind of a week it was. Your top scoring running back of week 15 was Duke Johnson of the Dolphins.
Oh my gosh.
Elevated from the practice squad. He beats out Jonathan Taylor. Nobody else even goes over 20. Nice day for Jeff Wilson. Austin Ekeler, even though he was limited by injury, did fine. James Robinson, nice day. But nobody went over 20 besides Jonathan Taylor, who needed the late he only had, I think, 6 points through 3 quarters. He needed the late long touchdown run to get up there. And then Duke Johnson with Myles Gaskin and Salvador Ahmed both on the COVID list. I think Gaskin came back, but he didn't get very many touches. It was Duke Johnson who got most of the touches, and he had a great game. Now, they were facing the Jets. I don't know that he'll repeat it. But Spencer, that shows you what kind of week it was.
Yeah, exactly, man. This is just a very wacky week. It's good to see James Robinson get his usual workload now that Urban Meyer's out of there in Jacksonville. J-Rob's back to being a must-start running back. But yeah, 1 and 3 there, Duke and Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson doesn't surprise me too much because Elijah Mitchell was hurt and they were facing Atlanta. Duke Johnson, though, I was expecting Gaskin to be back as the primary back. I didn't think they'd have that much of a restriction on him, but apparently they felt like he wasn't ready because they turned Duke Johnson loose. I mean, it just goes to show the Jets, pretty much anybody can run against the Jets because Duke Johnson hadn't been a fantasy relevant running back in quite some time. So I would expect Gaskin to retake the job here this week. I wouldn't go cuckoo to get Duke.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, and I'm just checking my Twitter feed here to make sure there's no more updates because the COVID-19 updates are flying in fast and furious. A little bit of breaking news right before we came on the air. You have Marquez Valdez-Scantling of the Packers is on the COVID list. Both Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs are on the COVID list. Austin Ekeler who was just on that list, he's on the COVID list. Now, the NFL did change its policy for vaccinated players. They just need the one negative test as long as they're asymptomatic and they can come back. So we'll see if those guys, earlier this season, if you were on the COVID list, you're pretty much going to miss at least one game. Now there's at least a chance. We'll see if that changes for any of those guys. But listen, we're in the semifinals now. You got to pay attention. If one of your guys goes out, or if you're looking to fill an RB2 spot or something, and somebody else goes out, and all of a sudden you can snatch the backup off the wire, that could win a league for you at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And then also Cole Beasley got it, and he's not vaccinated. So if you have Beasley on your team, you can forget that, either bench or drop him because he's on the 10-day quarantine. They are not vaccinated. So yeah, it's a minefield, man.
Cole Beasley, quite famously not vaccinated, as I recall from the summer. He was very outspoken about that. But it's going to cost him at least 10 days now. Speaking of that COVID list, top scoring wide receivers for week 15. Number 1 was Tyreek Hill on Thursday night. And of course, these lists don't include tonight's games. We could see some changes. Another kind of blast from the past, Spencer, Brandon Cooks, number 2 on the list.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, Cooper Kupp hadn't played yet, so he could end up on here. But yeah, a lot of new names again, man. Brandon Cooks is probably the least surprising after him. After 3 through 5 are all surprises. Gabriel Davis, Christian Kirk, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I tell you what, though, Amon-Ra's been really consistent as of late, and he's somebody, if you have him, great, because he's become pretty much a must-start as the primary weapon there in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you in today's NFL, a number 1 wide receiver, even on a bad team, maybe especially on a bad team, because the Lions are always having to throw. Although this week they looked great against the Cardinals, who knew? But yeah, he's become the man down there or up there, and got to be starting him in most leagues. Top scoring tight ends again. Travis Kelce is number one. It's by far his biggest week of the year, but he's on the COVID list. So we'll have to wait and see. You mentioned Mark Andrews, Spencer, Hunter Henry had a big day. This was the one list that really wasn't out of whack this week. These are all pretty much must starts every week.
Right. Yeah, probably the biggest surprise on here was Hunter Henry. He had been trending down. He had that goose egg against Buffalo where they barely threw the ball, but yeah, he bounced back in a big way. He's definitely their primary receiving tight end. And Kittle came back to earth somewhat, but still solid. It was good to see Kelce bounce back because he had been struggling, but that was just a case of, I mean, if you have Kelce, you got to stick with him. And those who did, which I hope everyone did that has him, were rewarded handsomely. This week probably helped you. If you had him, that helped overcome. Like if you had like a Jamar Chase, Tom Brady combination. If you had Kelce, well, that probably helped you overcome their dud performances.
Yeah. And really all it took was one or two good performances with everybody scoring low this week. If you had one of those top guys, they might have carried you through. If you had two of them, you almost certainly got through. So that was sort of the key to this week. Speaking of those guys, your MVP for week 15 for the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I had to go with Jonathan Taylor. Didn't have his best game of the year, but still a really nice week there at 170 yards and a touchdown. Got it late on a big 60-yard run, and yeah, 5 of his past 6 games over 100. He's making an MVP case. I mean, with a lot of these quarterbacks, with Brady struggling this week and a lot of the quarterbacks being up and down, you could seriously make a case that JT's the league MVP. The dude is just incredible, and for fantasy, with at running backs being scarce, he's just, if you have him, then there's a good chance you'll win your league because he's basically like the way Christian McCaffrey was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, listen, you can only hold him down for so long, and the Patriots did it for 3 quarters, and then if you've got him, you give that fist pump when you see him get free in the secondary because the guy can't be caught. I mean, that's one of the things that's nice about him is he's going to get those long touchdowns because if he does break free, he's not being caught in the open field. I mean, he understands angles, he understands how to pull away from defenders, and so just super impressive stuff. Another one of those early week primetime games. My fantasy star for week 15 was Travis Kelce. 10 receptions, 191 yards, 2 touchdowns. He really was having a nice game and then put a bow on it with the overtime touchdown, just barreling into the end zone. He had not been over 20-plus points, Spencer, since week 2. And so, kudos to those of you. Obviously, if you have him, you're going to start him. But those of you who were patient, didn't trade him away, anything like that, you got the payoff big time in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, that stat really surprised me. I'd have thought he'd have had. I knew he was not doing quite as well this year, but I would have thought he had 1 or 2 20-plus point games before. After week 2. But yeah, he made up for a lot of that lack of production this week. His season numbers will be right in line, I'm sure, of what they've been the past few years.
Yeah, he had a couple of 18s and 19s in there, but never a 20 since week 2. So just crazy stuff. He saved it for the right time as far as fantasy owners are concerned. And that was a big game for the Chiefs, too. They had to win that game to stay in control of the division and really now the race for the bye in the AFC. So you're watching the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. This is Zach Ewing with Spencer Urquhart. If you've got questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Give us a like or subscribe on YouTube or Facebook. And also, if you need something tonight from those 2 games, Rams and Seahawks or Eagles and Washington football team, leave it in the comments. We'll tell you what we think your chances are and hopefully speak it into existence for you so we can get some quarterfinal playoff victories out there in the bet.nola fantasy world. Also want to help you out for next week. A lot of waiver wire weeks were pushed back a day because of the NFL schedule. I know in my leagues, you can't make claims until tomorrow now. And so you do have some time to think about this, but if you're in the semis, the right waiver wire claim can win you a league. So let's get to it. Spencer, your targets for week 16.
Yeah, they actually have some really good targets this week. That could be league winners. I know with all the craziness there, these guys it's essential that you target some of these because I'm sure that unless you're just really lucky, I'm sure there's a certain part of your roster that could use help. And so to start quarterback wise, Tyler Huntley, I would go ahead and add him now in case Lamar can't go. Because if you wait until like Friday or Saturday and they announce Lamar can't go, then there's a good chance someone else will get him, because it's just whoever happens to see the news first. So I would get him now and prevent someone else from getting him later in case he gets another start, because he showed that he's as valuable because he can run. So he's definitely worth getting. Ronald Jones at running back with Leonard Fournette likely out is a must add, I feel like, because he's the last man standing in that Bucks backfield. Giovanni Bernard's also injured, so Rojo should see an every down role there. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, mentioned him earlier, how good he's been lately. It's crazy that he's owning that few leagues. He needs to be well over 24.4%. He's going to be probably well over 50% after this week because he faces Atlanta and he's a stud. So it's like, come on, y'all, stop sleeping on ASB or ARSB.
ARSB. Whoa, where'd you go?
Had a technical difficulties.
Well, Spencer gets that back up. Whoa, there he is. There's my waiver wire targets. Spencer, I like how you like repeat yourself. Like I done told you last week to go get Amon-Ra St. Brown. Go get him. And
yes.
He had a big week. You were right. And now
right,
got to go get him again. There he is. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a page out of your book. I told you to go get Gabriel Davis last week. Go get him. He was a top 5 wide receiver. Now Cole Beasley's out. Josh Allen is developing some trust in him. The Bills are going to have to push the ball to win. Now, they do face the Patriots this week. It's a little bit of a tough matchup, but you got to think it's not going to be quite the same as it was when they played in Buffalo. You won't get weather quite that bad. So I would go get him, especially if you have a hole or just quite frankly, to have somebody to plug in. And then I put Justin Jackson down again also because Austin Ekeler's on the COVID list. Jackson had 8 yards last week. He didn't get a touchdown, but he very well could have. He got some carries inside the 5 for the Chargers. If Ekeler can't go, he's going to be the guy for the Chargers in a big game for them against the no, they don't have the Broncos. The Raiders play the Broncos. Chargers, I'm going to have to go and look now who they play. And then I put Duke Johnson down. I know you talked about it, Spencer. Don't trust him going forward because of the COVID problems. The one thing I do like about it, though, is that they play on Monday night. They play the Saints. So one of the things that's useful right now is to go get somebody on Monday night so that if you do have a last-minute COVID problem, you've got somebody you can put in. It's extremely valuable just to have somebody to throw in there. And quite frankly, he looked really good against the Jets, much better than anybody could have anticipated. And so in a disaster scenario where you've got Myles Gaskin or you've got a flex play with Devontae Parker or Mike Gesicki or something, and they get a COVID flag on Monday afternoon, instead of taking a 0, at least you got somebody to throw in there. It can be real valuable to have a Dolphin or a Saint this week and have that Monday night play in case you have a Sunday night guy or a Monday night guy who goes out with COVID at the last minute. So that'd be my advice. And by the way, the Chargers play the Texans this week, so even better on
that's
Justin
a juicy
Jackson.
matchup.
If you can go get him. Now, again, it kind of depends if Ekeler can come back. But as you said with Tyler Huntley, you've got to be prepared for it. You've got to be ready, and have plan B, plan C, plan D, because that's what it's going to take right now with the way COVID is going.
Oh man, Plan D. That's what I need to call some of my fantasy team. Plan D, because that's what I'm dealing with a lot of them. It's freaking crazy, man. Yeah, Marquez Callaway is another name to watch for. They was talking about the Monday night thing. I mean, he did pretty well with Taysom this week. They had a good deep connection, so he could be another person to throw in the flex if you have a last minute COVID case.
And Sunday night, by the way, is Washington and Dallas. So see what comes out of the Washington game tonight. But if you're looking for those emergency backups, those Sunday and Monday night games are where you want to have them, because if you can always pivot to those guys. You can't do that with the Saturday starts or the noon starts. Mm-hmm. Spencer, let's move on to DFS. First of all, tonight in DFS, you can play a 2-game slate with that Rams, Seahawks, and Washington, Philadelphia game. Anybody you like tonight?
Yeah, I'm thinking that Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham could be really good values tonight, as well as DK Metcalf, because Tyler Lockett didn't get cleared, so he's gonna see a lot of volume. And I mean, of course, Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp's price so high, he's not really a value. And then maybe Darrell Henderson too, although I'm not sure if he'll get the full workload. So I'd probably go ahead and swing for the fences with Van, or probably Van Jefferson, because Odell is on the COVID list. He might be a little rusty. I think Van Jefferson's the move tonight.
All right. I like that. And I think Jalen Hurts could go crazy at quarterback tonight, so I might pay up for him as my quarterback. Moving on to next week, though, week 16, you've got a Bengals stack here, and you're going back to James Robinson for another big game.
Yeah, I'm going with. I know I've done Bengal stacks before. This week I'm going to try with Tyler Boyd, because he was the best value out of the trio there, and it seems like lately that trio's been pretty even. It hadn't, like, Jamar Chase, Higgins, like nobody's like been the clear cut top target. Those three dominate the looks. It's basically those three and nobody else. So I'm going to give Boyd a shot this week, and then of course Burrow. I think they're going to do really well against Baltimore. I see that being a high scoring affair for what could be for the division title. So I'm going to give them a shot there. And then James Robinson gets the Jets. It's the Jets, so I'm thinking he'll really get to go off this week. Everyone's been running wild against that team. So J. Robin, he probably would be my. I feel really confident about that. At 5,900, that's a must get for the Sunday slate, I feel. And then at tight end, Dallas Goedert, he plays tonight, and then he'll gets a good matchup Sunday. I believe they face, if I could recall,
they got the Giants on Sunday.
The Giants, the Giants, who stink. So yeah, I think Goddard's a good option. He coming off a huge game not too long ago, and it was Ertz is gone. So yeah, I think he's a good play there at that price.
Yeah, and another note for tonight, if you're looking to play DFS tonight, it has been confirmed both Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen are out for Washington. So it's going to be the Garrett Gilbert show. And if you want to save some money for the skill position players, you could throw Garrett Gilbert in there. He's probably going to be throwing because Washington's probably
get him dirt
cheap.
Yeah,
I think he's like 4,700 or something, which for a quarterback is super cheap. So if you're playing that showdown slate with the two games tonight, it's worth a thought. If you don't want to pay up for a Russell Wilson or a Matthew Stafford or Jalen Hurts, you could certainly pay up for your other skill positions players and be able to play Cooper Kupp and Darrell Henderson or Miles Sanders or whoever it is, and still, afford Garrett Gilbert at quarterback. Again, moving on to the weekend, my DFS values for week 16, I went with a Broncos stack, and it's a Broncos stack and it's a Mizzou stack. These guys have rapport going back to college. Every time Drew Lock gets in there for the Broncos, it seems like he throws to Alberto. And you can the two guys combined are 8,200, which saves you a lot of space for somewhere else if you go there. They got the Chargers. The Broncos, if you look at it, it's a little bit surprising to say they do run a lot, but they're not afraid to take shots downfield. And Drew Lock, say what you want about his consistency, he's got a very strong arm. They may fall behind. They may find themselves in a shootout. They don't play the Chargers. I'm sorry, they play the Raiders. And he played real well against the Raiders last year when those two teams met up late in the season. So I'm going to take a shot at Drew Lock. I'm going to take a shot at Alberto. And then your waiver wire pickup, Ronald Jones, is who I'm looking for the Buccaneers. They're going to want to establish the run. They play Carolina. Carolina not terrible against the run, but it's the Ronald Jones show now. Leonard Fournette's out, and for 5,100, too good of a value for me to pass up. And then another guy you mentioned, Spencer, OBJ, Odell Beckham, only 5,300 for the Rams. And the Rams get the Vikings, who have been very susceptible to the pass this year. And it just feels like he's building that rapport with Matthew Stafford, and the big game may be coming.
Right. Yeah. Next week would probably be the more ideal time to target Odell, because he won't be rusty. Because this week he hadn't been able to practice much. Where going into next week should be plenty fresh enough for that matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, if you've got some questions for us here on the Fantasy Roundup, leave a comment down on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be happy to get to it here in the last few minutes of our show. In the meantime, we're going to talk some sleepers. I think we may have bent the definition a little bit of sleeper this week, Spencer. Both of these guys are guys you're probably starting if you've got them. But maybe we just expect them to do better than anticipated. What's your thoughts on Michael Carter?
Yeah, that was exactly my thoughts on Carter. I mean, he's a guy that I wouldn't really consider him a must start, which is why I put him here. He's somebody that a lot of times if you have him, he's kind of in that flex discussion if the matchup's right, and then that's exactly the case this week. The matchup's perfect. It's Jacksonville. I mean, he's just gonna. I mean, I see him being able to do fairly well. Him and James Robinson, I think, will kind of be trading blows there as far as which running back does better with both having, good matchups and chances to shine. And Carter, he's, didn't do too much in his return. He'll have a week to, get more prepared. His ankle should be feeling better. And I'm thinking he'll have a big week this week, hopefully bring a lot of fantasy managers to the championship game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good option. I've actually got him in the league that I'm alive in the semifinals where I had to buy this week. And so I'm hoping you're right that he's got a big week coming up against Jacksonville. And then I went with Sony Michel. And my reason being here is I know he's been the guy in LA. I would not shy away from him with Darrell Henderson back. And reason being they play tonight, and Darrell Henderson's just coming back from a couple weeks off. So I think it's going to be kind of they're going to split the load a little bit. And then they come right back again and play again on Sunday. And they play the Vikings. Who don't have the greatest defense in the world. And on a short week like that, I've got to think they're going to split the load again next week. And so if you've got Sony Michel, I would not be afraid to fire him up.
Yeah, that's a good point about the short week deal. Yeah, because with that being factored in, and they're a playoff team, so they're not going to want to run Hindi into the ground and risk him not being, 100% for the games that really matter. So I could see that. He's somebody I wish I could have added him in some leagues when he was slept on, because now that he's, he's just not a big enough back to sustain a full season's workload. Maybe next year if he bulks up a little bit, which I've actually been impressed with him. He's actually done better than I expected. But yeah, here down the stretch, Sony Michel's getting more run and probably be a committee, I would expect, the next few weeks.
All right, Spencer, before we go, I do want to talk just real briefly about fantasy basketball, because as much of a mess as fantasy football was this week, fantasy basketball is a disaster area right now. I mean, you cannot set a lineup without having half of your guys out. Every day there's more games postponed. There's guys hitting the COVID protocols. Are you working the waiver wires harder at this point? Or are you just saying, whatever happens for a couple weeks, and let's get back to the point where we have full lineups again? I mean, how are you reacting to this mess in the NBA?
Yeah, I'm trying just not to panic. I feel like if just everyone's probably gonna have bad luck with that, so I'm just hoping that I don't run into a really good team at the time. And even if I do, it's like, well, I'm just gonna hope the guys I have can go to battle. And I mean, I'm still working the wire, just like I always do, and just it's tougher. But I'm trying not to overreact, and I'm definitely not dropping good players. That's something that I feel like a lot of people do. Like in our league, for example, someone had dropped Ja Morant. Like, really? Like, come on, man. Like, you can't drop guys like that. You just got to be patient and, just wait for their return. I had Devin Booker out, Bam Adebayo I have on my IR, guys like that. You just gotta hold tight. Just gotta hold tight and hope you can stay in contention by the time the stretch run comes. And then by then, hopefully the COVID will have chilled out.
Yeah, I missed that Ja Morant was out there. I guess you grabbed him, huh?
Yeah, I missed it too, actually.
Oh.
I was mad about that. Because I remember I was like, someone had dropped him, because then I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll get him later, because they were saying he'd be out a while, but he came back way quicker than expected. So kudos to, I think it was Will who got him, the taco fraud.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because right now I think two of my top three picks are out. Anthony Davis, he's injured, and then Zach LaVine has the COVID issues, and he's got COVID issues where they don't think he'll be back. He's already missed a week, and he's out another week, and so it's hard. But at the same time, like, listen, fantasy basketball is a long season. One loss is not going to kill you. You take an L, you take an L. I mean, you don't want to start dropping guys who can help you down the stretch. So if you need to take your lumps now, take them now versus the playoffs. Now, if this was the playoffs, be a different story where you're really going to have to start really working those waiver wires and playing schedules and things like that. But right now, you're just going to have to listen. If you plug guys in and they're out, and that's just what happens. If you've got other lineup questions, DFS for tonight, for later in the week, fantasy basketball, fantasy baseball drafts around the corner, you can hit Spencer up at Spencer the Guru on Twitter or Instagram. Spencer, any good questions you've had the last day or two?
Yeah, I haven't had too many concerning week 16, because a lot of people are still battling here in week 15 with these Tuesday games. I got a good one though from a buddy. I'm gonna have to get to him on Instagram. Well, if he's listening here, I'll get you right now, man. It was his question was a tight end question: Gerald Everett or Ricky Seals-Jones for tonight.
I'm gonna go with Everett myself, but what say you?
Yeah, it's really tough because I feel like, I'm going to go Everett too, because Lockett's out. I was thinking RSJ could see a lot of looks from this third string quarterback. A lot of times those kind of like quarterbacks that aren't too comfortable lean on their tight ends. But I'm thinking Everett, with no Lockett, Everett has more upside. So with that factored in, I'd have to go with him.
Yeah, that's a tough call. Ricky Seals-Jones has had a couple of good games. He's also been flat a couple of times. Of course, Everett's in that tier too, but as you say, without Tyler Lockett to work the inside and the underneath, it seems like it could be a Gerald Everett game for Russell Wilson as they try to just kind of control the ball and pick it down the field against the Rams and stay in that game. So that'd be where I would go as well. Well, hey, we wrapped it up in about half an hour here on the Fantasy Roundup today. Want to encourage you again. You can go to NOLA.com/Caesars, help out our sponsor, Caesars Sportsbook. Sign up for that mobile app. Make that your mobile sportsbook of choice. And we will be back on Thursday with At the Book to preview the weekend ahead. And Monday we'll also be live at Harrah's New Orleans to preview Monday Night Football between the Saints and Dolphins. So both of those shows will go live at 4 o'clock on these very same social media channels and on bet.nola.com. Until then, for Spencer, good luck this week, man. I know you're in a bunch of semifinals trying to finish up some matchups tonight.
Yeah, man.
We'll keep
it's
it,
a battle.
keep it going.
Yeah, man. Good luck to everybody out there.
All right. For Spencer, I'm Zach, and we'll see you next time.